Would you say a lot of the patients who have come to you with ACL tears had no previous background in that progressed strength training and really pushing it in the gym?
I would say probably 90% of them come in there and have never really strength trained before.
Coach Host, welcome to the Strong Female Athlete podcast.
Good morning. Good morning. It's great to finally be on the other side of this. We Mike and I had interviewed you. I guess it was about a year and a half ago. So this is fun to finally be on your podcast. We've been talking about it for a while, so I'm really excited to dive in.
I always love our discussions. And when I was on your podcast, I think we went for maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours. It was
Yeah,
a
it was
very
like a
long
Joe Rogan
episode.
podcast. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I'll actually link it in the caption below for everyone who missed it. It's on my YouTube channel, so be sure to check it out. We talk a lot about the need for strength training in female athletes, but also the importance of proper ACL rehab, especially in those later stages when girls are just a few months out from returning to the field. And we're going to talk about that more in detail today. So if you have a female athlete who's going through her ACL rehab right now, you need to listen to this conversation because the risk of re-tears is extremely high if you do not go about this properly and you rush those last few months without getting cleared. So, Coach, where do you want to start with this? What are some of the biggest issues you're seeing in ACL rehab in those later stages?
Well, I'll even take it a step back. Like what we're seeing, and I say we because Dr. Mike St. George, who runs his clinic out of Ivy Rehab in Warminster, Pennsylvania, him and I work very closely together, along with his assistant Ryan Colfer, who was my intern, who became his intern, who's now his strength coach. What we're seeing is one, the ACL injury rate is going from over 200,000 a year to over 300,000. So the increase in the injury is going up instead of down. So whatever we're doing as far as ACL prevention isn't really preventing this from happening, right? Now, that can be skewed a couple different ways. Right now we have flag football and we have more females doing, certain sports, and more females are more likely to tear their ACL than males anyway. Um, but also the re-tear rate went from 20%, 20 to 25% to upwards of 30 to 39%. So why is this going up instead of coming down? So there's a lot of variables out there, but I'll just name a few. One is improper rehab, early return to sport, and misinformation about what's going on. You know, and I think that that's really what we're here to kind of. Again, it's not a perfect science. There's no way to really truly standardize this, but what I believe that the system that Mike and I are creating is something that's going to give the parent and the athlete a more concrete way of, like, from day one when they walk in, what to expect. These are the milestones. These are the check marks. These are the things that you need to do in order to get to the next step. Does it guarantee that it won't happen again? No. But if we're doing all these things, it definitely is going to lower the risk for it happening again.
Let's just briefly touch on these quote unquote injury prevention programs. So, there's a lot of misinformation on this out there. And I think a lot of people think that injury prevention is like its standalone thing where girls just do body weight balance drills and mini band walks and warm up. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but that's not enough for the forces that cause ACL tears. Would you say a lot of these injury prevention programs are kind of babying our female athletes?
100%. I mean, if you're not lifting weights, and like I know that you're a big proponent of that, if you're not strength training at least twice a week, minimum twice a week, that's not preventing it. Right. Okay. I get doing a warm up, working on balance. They're the things that you should be doing outside of the actual strength training sessions, right? Like we can we can give out online home programs to do. This is a 25, 30-minute little program that you can do at home. That's to supplement or to complement what you're already doing in strength training. if you're not actually lifting weights, and that doesn't mean, and this isn't a knock on PT, but like if you go into a physical therapy place and they have a TRX hanging and a couple 8-pound weights and a 12-pound kettlebell in there and they call themselves a return to play environment, you're missing the mark big time. I mean, these girls need to be, with proper instruction, right, need to be really strength training. And I think that still the misnomer out there is that girls lifting weights are going to make them big and bulky, and it's not true. It's not true. So
Would you say a lot of the patients who have come to you with ACL tears had no previous background in that progressed strength training and really pushing it in the gym? Hey guys, just want to take a quick moment to shout out our sponsor, Simply Faster, and one of my favorite speed timing systems from them, the Freelap. I use it for my own sprint training as well as for my athletes, and they love it. It's super easy to set up, you can take it to the field on your own, and you can get accurate speed times to track your progress. Check the Freelap link in the caption below to start adding timing into your speed sessions. If you know me, you know I love my Freelap. If you're serious about speed, it's time to start timing.
I would say probably 90% of them come in there and have never really strength trained before. And I know that simply A, by asking them, and B, by seeing them not be able to handle a 40-pound goblet squat. Right? I mean, like, and they're shaking like a tree, a palm tree in a hurricane, like they're just not able to handle it. I mean, that's your basic foundational, movements. Forget about trap bar deadlifting and things like that. Um, so yeah, I mean, I would say that most of them come in there. Now again, I'm picking on a specific group of people because you work with females, and I would say 85% of my business is 13 to 22-year-old female athletes, and I'd say most of them, the majority of them, are soccer athletes. So, but yeah, them strength training, I don't see that, and that's what we try to explain to them is by getting you back to that 10, 11, 12-month mark, we're just getting you back to a true baseline, right? Now the strength training actually begins, right, where we can really start to add some load to what we're doing. But yeah, I mean, just getting them back to that point is just still baseline stuff. Yeah.
So I want to talk about those later stages. I think usually by month 8, month 9 post op, a couple things happen to people. One, insurance runs out. Or two, it doesn't run out, but their surgeon is like, the graft's healed, you're good to go, you're surgically cleared. And then people see that as, oh, I'm done. I can go back to sport full force, full minutes, full contact. And then that's when we get into that recipe for disaster with re-tears. So, have you had that happen often where people get to that stage and they're like, "Peace out, we're done, see ya."
That's the really difficult wheelhouse is like you said, that 8 to 12-month mark is because yes, some of them are getting cleared at 6, 7 months from the surgeon, right? Now again, this is no knock on orthopedic surgeons whatsoever, but we've had them on our podcast, right? And they've even said it. There's only so much that they can do. Once their work is done, they rely on the physical therapist and the strength coach to then take that to the next step. But when a parent and an athlete hears that they're cleared, sometimes because they don't have the right information, right, which is one of the variables of why they're re-tearing, they hear that and they automatically think, okay, well, I'm good to go back to doing X, Y, and Z. And there's progressions to that. And that's the system that we've started to build out is that there, these are the check marks, these are the things. Now we're also using objective data, right? Which is another piece that, again, we can harp on a little bit of, the subjective testing and this outdated testing that we're still seeing, the single leg hop test. Like I had Mike Boyle on our podcast, and even he said, what athlete is hopping on a single leg 3 times in a row and then in diagonal and then for speed? Like we're using objective data like the dorsal V movement assessment, where they're doing planking, side planking, single leg squatting, single leg hopping vertically, hopping in 4 different directions. We're using a quick board, which is the neurocognitive end, where we can in less than 4 minutes assess their agility. And then there's programs on there that we've laid out from from, stage one all the way through return to play, where they're doing agility movements off the board. But we're using this board, which is a 3x2, that can gather so much information. We're measuring, contact time, symmetry, explosiveness, accuracy, and all these. Like, you're just not seeing that in a subjective testing return to play. So, not to get off topic with it, but it's just that 8 to 12 month time frame is just, and it varies, right? Every athlete is going to be a little bit different. Sure, an athlete may look good at that 9 month mark, but the risk to reward doesn't really make sense. And that's what I try to explain to an athlete without fear mongering. I'm just saying, listen, do you want to go back to week 1 through 4? Remember what week 1 through 4 or 1 through 8 was. Why take that chance at that 7, 8, 9 month mark and just work on doing more things? And then what we have is, again, the system that we've created. There's check marks, there's guidelines, there's milestones. It's like going to school. If you don't have 70%, you shouldn't advance to the next level. Now, with the educational system, we're passing people through, just like we're doing with this here. Okay, you look good, okay, it's the 12-week mark or the 16-week mark, you're ready to run. No, you're not. You're not ready to run until you're ready to run, right? There's steps that need to get to that point. So I think that what happens is when that surgeon clears them, that's what the parent and the athlete are thinking. But a lot of them, not their fault, they don't know what that truly means. And not everyone has access to that next level of care, right? Because sometimes it's 6 months, which is a long time in physical therapy, you're cleared. And PT's going, just go back to the gym and do your thing and get on the treadmill and run. And here you go. We're gonna program the speed. Again, not everyone has access to the treadmills that we have, where your force is producing, or your force is producing that speed for you, right? Instead of prescribing, okay, I'm gonna run at 6.3 miles an hour. Like, no, like, you're gonna run it how you run. Plus they don't really give you the proper striking mechanics and things like that, which becomes a whole other thing, right? Just because you can run doesn't mean you know how to run. Running is an art, and understanding. So again, the assessment tools that we have, we're really diving in deep. To me, I tell the parent, it's like a GPS. I could drive from Florida to California tomorrow, but it might take me 3 or 4 weeks. If I have a GPS, it might take me 3 or 4 days. So what we're doing is we're able to dial in exactly on the deficiencies that the athlete has, and really be able to say, okay, listen, Billy, or Sally needs to get to this point before we can do the next thing with them. That's up to the athlete to get to that point. If they don't do that, then they don't pass and they don't go to the next thing. We don't just do it because it's criteria based and you go, okay, well, you've gotten to that mark and it's time to do X.
I have a lot of questions about the assessment piece. So I think you touched on a good point that some of it is very objective and then some is more subjective, and it's the coach's eye looking at, okay, how is their movement, how is their stability? And with like some of the strength assessments, how do you feel about the single leg press for the quad strength, or are you using other modalities to kind of assess that quad strength?
So with the quad strength, in the early stages, you can use the handheld dynamometer, where you're testing, quad and hamstring strength. But really, it's the numbers, right? You're seeing the numbers on the athlete. What we're really looking at is limb quality, and the symmetry between the two, right? Because we're always trying, and not to get on a soapbox with the biodex, because that's a whole other thing. Mike and I just talked about
I have
that, and
questions about that too.
yeah. Well, I think Mike would even be able to answer them better, but, like, with that, it's just like you're seated, you're strapped in, you're using leverage, and, like, it's not functional,
Yeah.
right? Okay, that might maybe be good early on, but to use that as your, "Okay, you're cleared to do X, Y, and Z," it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Like
It's
a
not functional. You're
9 month
not.
post-op.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
insurance, I have athletes come in. Matter of fact, I've had 3 athletes that I ended up sending over to Mike to do some later testing, because I was down in Florida, he would not do the subjective testing that the hospital or the surgeon wanted them to do because it's not doesn't make any sense to him. But because they're through insurance, insurance wants to see that these are the testings that need to be done in order for them to actually be cleared to go back to playing. Makes no sense to me. I really just don't understand that. But the single leg press, I mean, sure. I mean, that could be part of the program that you're doing. And if you can see that the athletes' numbers are going up, great. But what we want to see is quality of movement. And that Dorsavi movement assessment that was created by Dr. Trent Nessler, uh, that's what we're really looking at. Because if you don't have the quality and you don't have the symmetry, that's where the re-tear and things can come in. Of course, strength is a piece of that. That's what we're doing. That's the hardest piece because I don't truly believe that physical therapists understand the program design and the proper progression to that, right? You're seeing a lot in PT, 3 sets of 15, blah, blah, blah. And they're using an 8-pound weight and they're doing, they don't even have the amount of weights in most physical therapy locations to even work on true strength. They're working on muscle endurance.
Mm,
So,
yeah. I actually had that the other day. I had a girl who was in a more like, kind of like clinical setting at a
mm.
hospital, and she's like going on 9 months post-op, and she's never learned how to deadlift, and not even with just dumbbells. So like no hinging pattern, no like real hamstring strength or base. So it's just interesting. And I think it's important to touch on that. Like, what equipment should a PT office have for true return to play? So you mentioned like some of those like bigger like barbells, hex bars for more of the strength stuff. Anything else that people should look for, like a turf space and all
So
that?
it's interesting when Mike's facility was being created, I had recently moved to Florida, and they were moving out of the location that both of us were in at one point. And what I explained to him was, we want this to look more like a sports performance facility than you do a PT clinic where the walls are bare. You got like soft, music playing in the background, and again, obviously there are, other athletes other than or there's other uh, patients that need to be coming in there other than the athletes. You have your geriatric population, so you want to make sure that you're conforming to all that. But the one thing that we made sure of in Mike's clinic was that there was turf space. There was the ability to do different things. He's got a mountable squat rack that goes on in there. He's got road bikes. He's got the performance treadmill. He's got the light speed over top of the performance treadmill. They have hex bars in there. They use the Kaler core, which is another tool that we're using that not a lot of PT locations have. He's got dumbbells up to probably like 60 pounds. He's got a barbell in there. He's got bumper plates. In my facility in Newtown, we're in 7,000 square feet, so we have 6 racks, benches, all kinds of stuff. But as far as a PT clinic, that's what you should be kind of looking at when you walk in. You should feel like your athlete is in one of those type of facilities. Now, that doesn't mean that they actually know what they're doing in there
Yeah.
either, So, but again, like I'll probably get hate mail on, I'm not hating on PTs. Mike is one of my best friends. He will even say the same things. All we're trying to do is say PTs level up, strength
Yeah.
coaches level up. That's all. I'm challenging you to move your athlete, and there are tons of locations throughout the country that I see that I'm friends with, PTs that are doing an exceptional job. So it's not like they're not doing that. But if you're going to put it on a general scale, most of what you're seeing out of these PT clinics is very cookie cutter. They're not thinking outside the box, and that doesn't mean throwing people on all different kinds of you know uh, bouncing off of Bosu balls and doing. And I do some of that stuff, but I'm just saying like it doesn't have to be crazy like that in order for you to say like it's return to play. But the single leg press, that would be probably part of my program. We didn't have one in our facility for a while. Now we have a Kaiser leg press. So I use it now, but before that, it was split squats, it was reverse lunges. Um, I'm not a big proponent of back squatting any of my athletes, so we'll front squat. And guess what? Most of them are going to goblet squat for a while because what we notice in the assessment itself is that there are parameters with the objective data also. And if you're getting too much forward flexion while you're squatting, you're using a lot more of your low back. So you're not even using your quads. And I mean, yeah, okay, you're forcing that through, but you're seeing most of that force come through your low back. So we want to make sure that our athletes really aren't past like that 35 to 45-degree angle. I mean, typically in the testing, if it's past 30 degrees, it's going to show up as, you're outside of those parameters. But when you're starting to load that movement, yeah, you're going to be a little bit more forward flexion, but it really shouldn't be much more than
So I do want to talk about just what we're saying about like PTs and strength coaches. Look, in any industry, there's going to be really good experts and then people who are just not doing it correctly. And I think with physical therapy though, a lot of parents see like DPT behind the name and they just assume, oh, they're a doctor of physical therapy. That means this ACL rehab is exactly what it should be. And I just want to warn people like this is why we're doing this episode. You have to find a physical therapist who works in a performance like facility, who has that equipment, who knows the proper progression and who is essentially training the athlete for the demands to get back on the field. So let's kind of talk about that. Like, say you have someone at 9 months and they're going to go back in a couple of months. What are you preparing them for and what types of things are you doing with them from like strength to plyometrics to deceleration and starting to work up to sprinting?
So I have a unique way of, and I say we again, Mike and I have created this system where um, I'll do it's almost like a triphasic type of training where we're using this Kaler Core tool, which is a reprogramming tool, um, and that might be our first movement. And that first movement is more about isometric holding. So let me, for instance, we're using this tool and the athlete is going into a squat and we're holding that squat position for anywhere between 5 and 10 seconds. We'll do that for about a minute. From there, we're going to take them out of that again, depending on what phase they're in. Because I also use iso-inertia, eccentric types of tools that are created through the Wheeler Sports Technology, which another manufacturer and strength coach, he's down in the Tampa area, Carlos Wheeler. Um, I picked up his equipment years ago, and it was a game changer for me because it really works on the eccentric or the breakdown. Like, okay, in an ACL injury, most of the time in non-contact, it's in the braking mechanism, right? The stopping and then the change of direction. Well, this equipment really helps on that deceleration side. So again, depending on the phase, we may use that squat. If they're early on, we might goblet squat, or we might trap bar, deadlift with them, just depending. And then from there, what I might do is a box jump, or if they're early stage, that might be a depth drop. Like to me, I want to see early on, can you handle the load coming into the ground? Once you can handle that and it looks good and there's not a lot of valgus or arch collapsing and things like that, then I'm going to work on them jumping up onto something. And then that could be, progressive on the plyometric side into just a stick and hold, into a reactive jump, into a continuous jump, right? The very basics of what plyometrics are, right? That's work on that force absorption or that force management, and then let's work on force production, and then let's make that reactive and then continuous from there. But on the strength side, like I said, we're going to use that tool in the beginning. Now, as you get a little bit further in the phases, if their movement pattern looks good, then I'm not going to use that tool for that, but that tool could be used for other things as well. That's a whole other, podcast in itself. But as far as what I do in my strength program, we're doing a concentric movement. I'm sorry, an isometric movement first, an eccentric movement second, and then a concentric movement third. The fourth piece to that is core control. So most programs you might have that, like everything is grouped in its own little thing. What I noticed, and this is through lots of conversations with Dr. Trent Nestler, is the core control, if that is fatigued and not working, that is a high risk potential for an ACL tear. Okay. So that fourth movement, that core control, that could be a bear hold, that could be a bear crawl, that could be a plank, that could be a plank on a ball, moving the ball around. Just could be many different things. On a So that would be more on your like your bilateral or your unilateral knee dominant day. On a hip dominant day, I'm going to do a lot more lateral type of movements, especially for the core. That might be modified side planking. That might be full side planks. That might be a side plank with a leg lift. That might be a side plank with a cable row. It's a lot more lateral stability. So it just depends on what day that we are on the program. Typically, the way I program is, and I've changed some things as we've gotten through this system, is now I do a knee dominant day, so you're doing bilateral and unilateral, and then I'll add acceleration
Mhm.
uh, drills to that. My second day is more hip dominant, bilateral and unilateral with lateral stability, but we're going to work on deceleration on that day. My third day is a lot more transverse rotational type of movements, especially once the athlete is able to handle that stuff. So if you're coming in 3 days a week, that's what you're typically going to see. This is day one, this is day two, this is day three.
Yeah, that's awesome. Now, as far as like starting at 9 months, how are you introducing like change of direction and building up to full speed and more of the chaotic drills?
So I'll take that back just a step, because in order to do the change of direction, we got to be able to run in one direction, right? So if we don't look good running, and then like that's a whole other question. Like, what does running, when am I able to get off the crutches? When am I able to, run? When am I able to do change of direction? Like, they're the three, big ones early on. When you can master your impact control, then we're allowing the athlete to run. Okay. Once they're able to run, then we'll slowly start to put in different change of direction. For instance, once you're running linear, I will then have you start to run in figure eights linear, right? And then we can maybe start to do some weaving. And then from there, we go into circular running drills. So they run in a circle to kind of, it's more of a soft way to introduce that change of direction. Now you're working on running on the inside of each foot. So we're going to run both ways around the circle. Then what I'll do is I'll start to have them shuffle around the circle. Again, it's not that hard plant and stopping on each side. From there, what we'll do is, if that looks good, they're lateral. I call it a lateral transfer, where you're basically just using a cone and you're just working on the shin angle so that you can see that they know how to decelerate from that position. Then we'll go into just a lateral shuffle with a hold, and then we'll do a lateral shuffle with a crossover, and then we'll start to add in more drop step, change of direction type of stuff. So that's really how I want to see you go linear. I want to see you run in circles. I want to see you shuffle in a circle. I want to see what you look like shuffling laterally. And then once those pieces are there, then we can start to be a little bit more creative with drop stepping and change of direction. Some of my most recent posts on Instagram, you'll see some of the athletes doing a lot of that drop step, change of direction, and then you can just start to get creative setting up cones and doing different things. But honestly, with the quick board that we use, there's so many different drills that they can do just on a board. That is the first. That's the second piece. When they walk in, they're going to do soft tissue. They're going to do a little bit of a dynamic warm up, and then they're going right onto the quick board. They could be on there for 10 to 12 minutes, and that is really setting the mind, the CNS, into full gear. And then we'll go into doing the strength training, uh, or I'll add in a couple of other drills, just depending on what phase we're in. And then we're always finishing with some type of conditioning. If you can't run, you're biking, you're rowing, you're using a ski erg. When you can run, then you're doing, sled pushing, you're doing runs on the treadmill, and then we have a whole program as far as the running on the treadmill and the conditioning, which is, like, oh, well, I ran a mile today. I'm like, I don't need you to run a mile, because that's not your energy system. I want you to run 8 100s with a break in between, two 200s, with a break in between, a couple 400s with breaks in between. Like, so that, and it accumulates into a mile and a half, 2 miles, and things like that. So Yes, you're running that, but you're not just going to get on a treadmill and, oh, I ran a mile today. Like Mike and I just don't do stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, as far as going full speed in a lot of these drills, what's the timeline for that? At what month are you introducing that on average?
That's a great question. So we jog, we run, we sprint. When you can look good jogging and you look good running, then we can start to add in more sprinting. Um, and then obviously with the jogging, we're making sure that you know how to stop.
Mhm.
My best analogy, I don't even know where I got it, I can't take credit for it, is imagine if I gave you the keys to my Porsche. But before you took the Porsche out on the road, I let you know, by the way, it doesn't have brakes. Are you still going to get in my car? So we always talk about speed. We always talk about, athletes getting faster. But if you don't know how to stop, it really doesn't matter. So while you're jogging, we're going to work on decelerating. While you're running, we're going to work on decelerating. And while you're sprinting, we're going to work on decelerating, because that's now when we're getting back to the true part of the sport. I want to see my athletes sprint 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 yards and be able to hit the brakes. And then from there, we're going to be able to hit the brakes and be able to change direction. So it's going to vary. I don't have an exact answer on that. Some athletes look really good at 9 months doing that. Some athletes don't look good at 12 months doing that.
Yeah.
So it's going to depend on the athlete. It's going to depend on how many times they're getting into, to do their strength training. It's going to, and that's the biggest piece, right? I mean, I see all your stuff. I hear you up on that hill. Just like hello, like we need the strength train here. When you have strength and power, that creates the speed, right? So if you want to be faster, you don't keep running. That's a component of it. What you need to do is you need to be in the weight room, you need to be hitting the weights, you need to work on your power, and then that, along with working on your mechanics, that will help you get faster. But remember the Porsche analogy. Yes, that's great to be fast, but do we know how to stop? Right? Not a rolling stop. Like I want to be able to see you, pump the brakes, choppy steps, pop, 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 and then stop on a dime. Not stop and roll through that, or stop and you have wonkiness in your knees and things. Like I want to be able to see you stop. And this is the problem that we're having, is a lot of these athletes are just not even built for the sport that they're actually playing. But because they want to be active, and I love that. I love that. But like, you know, some girls and some boys just aren't built for the sport that they're playing, and then they're playing it over and over and over and over again, and there's no breaks. Like Mike and I have said before, like, why don't we take an off season and just dedicate like a twice a year, a 12-week mesocycle of just strength training, and then what you can do is then in between that put in your maintenance programs. But if you don't dedicate 12 weeks twice a year, summer and winter, to a mesocycle of strength training and proper understanding, you're kind of missing the boat.
I can't repeat that enough, and I'm always shouting from the mountaintop on this, and
I hear you. I
yeah,
hear
I
you.
know, I know, and yeah, I think if female athletes can strength train year round the best they can. And look, like I get schedules are busy, but if you can at least do once a week in season, but continue that in the off season and bump that up to 3, 4 days a week, I would rather that than you just train in the summer for 2 months and then don't see us the rest of the year. Like that's when it becomes more of a problem when it's so
You're losing the gains that you've right.
yeah,
If you can
yeah,
get in there once a week, it's low volume, but it's effective. Let's get in there. Let's
yeah.
do 2 sets. Let's just come in and do 6 to 8 reps and just keep that going. Because if you're not doing that, all that work that you put in is for naught within 2 weeks.
It's crazy how quickly they lose the muscle too, and yeah, just with, like, a lot of my strength standards for a lot of late stage girls, they're very high, and I always laugh, I'm like, "Yeah, like, I don't even think healthy girls who haven't torn their ACL yet can't even do these strength standards that I'm, like, trying to clear people with." Like,
Yep.
a lot of
Well,
girls can't even like squat half their body weight yet. And I'm like, well, that's a problem. A lot of girls can't even deadlift their body weight yet. And it's just, yeah, it's so crazy. Like some of these late stagers are going back stronger than the rest of the squad
Because they've
who,
actually put in the time for the last
yeah,
9 months to do the, or not even the 9 months, but in the last 3 months to do that. Which
exactly.
brings me to a point with the movement assessment. If we were to go out to a soccer team, let's just use them, with the movement assessment and just assess the whole team, half that team technically shouldn't even be on the field playing right
Yeah.
now. But
But they just have luck on their side, and for some people, I hate to say it, it's only a matter of time because strength training reduces your risk of 50%, which is a very good fighting chance. So at least do that at the bare minimum.
exactly. Amen to that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know if there's anything you see just kind of across the board with girls soccer players or female athletes in general, but if we were to go out to a practice and do a lot of these assessments, I would say I notice weak core stability,
Yep.
just instability in the knee with plyometrics, and a lot of like trunk rotation and
Just
just
your
not
hips.
striking the ground well on
Yep.
sprinting, being
Yep.
very inefficient with their mechanics, arms flailing all over the place. Those are just some of the ones that I see a lot. I don't know if you've noticed any other ones where it's like, "Ooh, that's an ACL waiting to happen."
You know what's interesting? The biggest thing that I do when I have the athlete come in for their assessment is their shoes come off right away.
Mhm,
Most of the time, I have you come out of your socks. What I see most with an ACL returning to play during their initial assessment with me, whether it be at 10 weeks, whether it be at 25 weeks, is that I see a lot of the arches in the feet collapsing down. And what I explain to them is these are the things that you're on all day. These are your
mhm,
feet. These are your proprioceptors. Your feet aren't strong and you don't have strong arches and your arches are collapsing in, the ankle's rolling in, and guess what's happening at the knee? The knees are automatically caving in. When that's happening, you're already in that valgus position and you haven't even began to run yet. And when you start to add speed to that and then trying to stop with that, so I'm a big proponent of getting the feet stronger. Um, we, what we'll suggest is the toe spacers, the rubber toe spacers. Girls are more used to that because when they get their toes done, they have that little foam thing that goes in between the toes. It's a little bit more uncomfortable to walk around in, but if you can go to Amazon and go to toe spacers, I'll give you some links to some of the equipment that we're using. Um, that will help create space in the toes, and then um, I'll do like band pickups. So you're doing talk about let's do some single leg stuff and let's work on some things. Here's a 25-minute program. Standing on one leg, taking a sock or a band and dropping it and using your other foot to grab the sock, pick it up. Now what you're doing is you're working on the flexors of the foot on the right foot, call it. You're standing on your left foot, so now you're working on single leg balance. Then you just drop the sock and you go and pick it up again, or a towel pull. Using the bottom, using your toes like their fingers, and that'll help to create stronger arches. The other thing that I see is weak hips. That's the really big one. Is the weak hips, which is your lateral stability. When those two things aren't there, what is the centerpiece to all that? It's the knee. You go into basketball. How many athletes do you know? "Oh, I got to get my ankles taped." You're creating a lack of mobility in the ankle. And now the next thing up is either a high ankle sprain, a calf strain, or a knee issue because you're limiting the mobility at the ankle. Well, I have weak ankles. Okay, we'll make them stronger. At their bones, but make the muscles around the bones stronger. And if you have to tape your ankles, then you shouldn't be playing at a high level yet. You should be in PT or in some kind of post rehab program or in some kind of strength program to get that stronger. But to tape the ankles and like taping and doing all, it's it's not going to prevent everything from happening. It's you're just limiting what that joint can actually do. So it doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I think there's a lot of things we're still caught in down the road. Now, again, this is a knock on NBA, but look at what happened this year in the NBA playoffs. We had three top level athletes all tear their Achilles tendon. Why is this happening so much now?
Mhm.
But what you also hear is maybe they missed a game or two before that because of a calf strain. That's your precursor to
Yeah.
most likely the next thing. So where's the treatment? And I understand that there's a lot of money on the table there. It's the playoffs and they're being rushed back and they're trying to do the things for their team. But guess what happens? Now most of them, or all three of them guys, will not play the next NBA season. They'll be lucky if they can get back to the playoffs if their team makes it.
Yeah.
So there's a cost for all this. So again, what we're trying to do is educate the parents, the athletes, the coaches as best we can. Again, with the coaches, that could be a whole other podcast in itself. Mike and I, again, I have tons of friends that are coaches, but they're great at the X's and O's. They don't know how to return an athlete when they come back to sport, which might lead into one of your next questions as far as what do they do when they go back to their team, right?
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of girls that are the captain of the team or they're a big part of the team and they're skipping out on training sessions because they want to be at the team practice. When you become the ball retriever, you become the social person that you're just sitting there talking to your girlfriends, and you could be in the strength room working out and getting stronger for you. Because another analogy that I like to use is when you're on an airplane, which I spend a lot of time on, one of the first things they tell you is when the oxygen mask comes down, put yours on first before you go and help somebody else. Why? Because if you don't help yourself, you can't help others.
Mhm.
So if you're not helping yourself get better and you're skipping out on post rehab or rehab sessions because you got to be there with the team and the coach wants you there because he's going over the X's and O's, but yet you know, Eric is not playing right now. Like, what? It's not helping you.
Yeah.
So do one or two things. Like don't show up and then run that risk, or figure out how you're going to either go to the practice and you're going to be there for the beginning of it, or you're going to come late because you're going to tell the coach, "Hey, listen, I just came from rehab." But without you getting your proper training done, you make you're not helping the team. You're truly I know that you want to be there, and I respect that. It's not that we're trying to keep you away from your team, but you came to me for one reason, and that's to get better, stronger, and more confident. If you're not in seeing me, then that means that you're not doing your side, you're not being accountable, and then my reputation's on the line. Well, I worked with him, but like I retore my ACL.
Right.
You weren't there for the whole thing. Now, I've rehabbed over 150 athletes at this point in the last 11 years. Um, I would have to say that there's probably a 10 to 15% of those that have retorn it. I mean, full transparency, that happens. Some of them just out of bad luck. Some of them have been with me and they've trained up to 16 months. You
Oh,
know,
wow.
um, some of them left early. Some of them stopped strength training. Some of them stepped on a girl's foot and just torn opposite. So there's going to be that percentage that do that, and that's just unfortunate. And honestly, it breaks my heart to see that, because I know the the financial investment that the parent has put in to all this. I see all the blood, sweat, and tears.
Mm.
I raised two boys. I worked in an all boys high school for 15 years before getting into doing this, you know, more full time. 85% of the athletes that I've rehabbed have been females. Now I say I have about 85 daughters because I truly I tell the parent and I tell the athlete, I'm a parent first, coach second. I care about your daughter like they were mine. And it breaks my heart to hear and get the text messages that, Maya or Erica or whoever has retorn their ACL or torn their meniscus because they went back too soon. You know, it's just because I see it. I know what they're doing. I know that they're putting in. It's not from lack of effort, but sometimes I get that you want to go back to play, but sometimes you just got to wait a little bit longer. And now what Mike and I have really started to do is figure out what we can really send the athlete back to practice with, because I think that that's the biggest missing piece, right? You go back and you're like, oh, well, my rehab coach or my PT said I can do this. And, or they go back and they say, I've been cleared. And the coach just thinks, okay, well, there you go, Eric, you get back in. You're doing, some small side games.
The full
You're,
practice.
you're not ready for that. Like, you can go back, you can do the warm up with the team, you can do this, but then here's the things we want you to do away from the rest. You're at the practice, but this is the things that you're doing over here that are different. And then there's protocols that we've taken from some of the orthopedic surgeons, that there's some suggestions. Okay, maybe your first 10 practices are, you know, um, doing X, Y, and Z, and then the next 10 practices are this. Right? But they're full practices, right? And then maybe stage 3 of that is, okay, you're scrimmaging with your own team, and you got a yellow jersey or a red jersey on, and there's no contact on Erica,
Yeah.
right? Then it's scrimmage against another team, because now they don't have mercy on you, right? Now they don't care. Now you become an easy target, because most likely you have an ACL brace on. So now we're going to be like, okay, well, but all the while in training sessions or your rehab sessions, now we're working on contact. Yes, you see me a lot, hitting athletes with a stability ball and doing things like just getting them psychologically prepared to have that contact. But that truly doesn't correlate over until you're actually banging up against other athletes. And then it becomes, okay, well, you're going to get 5 to 10 minutes in the first half, 5 to 10 minutes in the second half, and we can progressively give you more minutes. I get that Erica's a starter. I get it. She's the best one on our team. I understand that. But Erica's not ready to go play 45 minutes in one half and 45 in another. Like, you got to build that back. It's load management,
Yeah.
right? Professional athletes do it. They sit out games. They don't do back to back anymore. They don't do that. Like, so why are we coming back from an ACL and you're going to a tournament and you're playing in 3 games in a weekend?
And
You
I
know?
think that's one of the biggest missing pieces, which is crazy. It's still a missing piece now because it's one of the most important is that gradual buildup back into practice, back into games. Because I always use the marathon analogy. You want to run a marathon without slowly progressing that distance over weeks for the body to very safely adapt, not be sore, not get injured and get like some strains. So I always try to tell parents that, and I think it's important, like PTs and strength coaches get involved, even though they're maybe out of the clinic now, they passed all of your rehab assessments for that return. There still has to be that plan and that communication with the coach. Hey, she can only do the dynamic warm up with the team and maybe the unopposed technical drills today. Okay, then maybe in 3 weeks she does one contact drill, or maybe she's a neutral or a target player in that drill.
Exactly.
And too often I have heard horror stories of girls just getting cleared by the 10, 11, 12-month mark, and they go straight back to playing the full game. And
Yep.
then they get tendonitis in the knee, and then they get shin splints and all these other injuries that shouldn't
Right.
be
Right.
happening. I don't
Or
know
there's
if you
soft tissue stuff on top of that. Yes. Oh,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I'm
Yep.
sure you've seen that a lot, and it's just negligent because it's like you literally just did a full year of hard rehab, hard strength training work, like you said, blood, sweat, and tears, and then you go back full force expecting that your body can handle that load, not just the physical load, but the cognitive load and fatigue of soccer too is a lot to take. So it's like, why can't
And
we
it's
just
hard to emulate that in a rehab setting also, right? That's
yeah,
game stuff, right? Like,
yeah,
now you're taking in elements, it's hot or it's cold. Uh, you're playing in a game that has meaning to it now. It's not just it's not a rehab session, it's not a practice. This is for real. The adrenaline. Are you hydrated? And that could be a whole other, gamut of things that Mike and I talk about when they come in, like electrolytes, creatine, um, you know, um, what I'm drawing collagen. Like, there's just like magnesium at nighttime. Like,
yeah.
are we doing all these things? Right? These are simple things. Yes. Can it be a little expensive? Well, guess what? Professional athletes are spending a lot of money on their body. You are technically a professional athlete without an off season. So treat your body the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, and that could be a whole other podcast. Maybe we'll have you back on for the, like, nutrition and sleep and, like, lifestyle part of rehab because it is still very important, and I think that's, like, a misconception. A lot of girls are like, "Well, I'm not playing full force, I shouldn't have as many calories," and it's like, you're still training really hard with your PT or strength coach, so you need to get that back in, you need to build those muscles, so yeah,
Talk about
that's a
being a
whole
parent.
other
Some of the first questions I ask every time they come in, it's like, "How was your sleep last night?
Yeah.
You hydrated?" "Yeah, I had a bottle of water." I'm like, "That's not hydrated." "Did you eat today?" "Yes, I had a sandwich and a bag of Doritos." That is not proper nutrition, you know?
Or
Like,
a
so
bar. I hear a lot of
yeah, oh,
girls
yeah,
say, "A
I had a
bar."
protein bar. I'm like,
I'm like, "Oh,
"Oh,
that's
cool,
like"
that'll get you through the warm up."
yeah,
You
it's
know,
like
like,
bird food.
"Well, what am I supposed to eat?" I'm like, "Well, I mean, listen, we could it depends on some of the things that you like, you know, like, I'm not in nutrition certified by any means, but I definitely have a better understanding of that. Mike is like a drill sergeant about that with these kids. He even has the noon hydration tablets in there,
Mm,
which I've started to bring into, my sessions as well. Here you go. Here's the tablet. Pop it in your water. I guarantee you that your workout is going to be better just by being better hydrated with some electrolytes. Another piece that we use a lot is the blood pressure or the blood flow restriction cuffs, right? You have to be really hydrated to use them.
yeah.
Right? I've seen kids get dizzy, using them, and I'm like, "Are you hydrated today?" "No, not really." Bottle of water, or I had two today. I'm like, well, water alone isn't getting it done,
Yeah.
right? We need
No,
something that, like a coconut water, maybe that has the extra electrolytes and the potassium and things like that. But bottled water is not really getting it done either. That's not hydration. So I mean, and then you see, the kids coming with the Gatorade, and I'm like, that's like, I said, you could probably start your car with that stuff,
yeah.
and they're like, ew, and I'm like, well, I mean, like, like it's just it's you don't need that. You don't need the Gatorade. Like years ago when Gatorade was made, I think it had like 5 ingredients. Now
Mhm.
there's so many ingredients that it'll take you 20 minutes to read the label on the back. So it's that is not good either. I mean, I just had a group of girls up in PA. I was working with them in a preseason, and a couple of them had Gatorade. I was like, no, don't come with that again. Here's what I want you to do. Go online, go to Amazon, go get some noon hydration tablets. Go on and get some electrolytes. It doesn't have to be noon, but uh, do something on that level and get rid of the Gatorade.
I'm glad you said that because I do hate on Gatorade a lot. I'm like, it is not optimal. And for girls, hormone issues, acne, they're wonder why their skin sucks. And I'm like, the Gatorade is like so high sugar. You can get sugar from fruits and more of those nutrient dense foods. You don't have
How about some
to do
watermelon? How about some pineapple? How about some blueberries?
exactly.
Like, how about
Yeah. And
honey?
then there's potassium in those too. And
Yep.
it's like, that's more bang for buck and you're going to feel better. So,
Yeah, that's what I
yeah,
say.
maybe we'll have you on for, nutrition during ACL rehab. I
There
think
you go.
that's so great, and just, like,
We
things
do
you're
we do have some things, and I mean, I don't know how much you want to be able to put in the show notes, but I can send a bunch of different things
okay.
as far as some of the nutrition, so that they can at least have some resources to get to.
Mhm,
The other thing is obviously, going to the Coach Haas website, coachhos.com.
mhm,
There's a lot of stuff on there. There's testimonials. There's it'll lead you to the ACL Return to Play Academy page as well,
mhm.
and that's those two are the two websites where most of the people are coming to. Obviously, the Instagram, the Facebook, the YouTube page. Mike and I are really trying to make sure that we at least go back to doing our 15-minute juice, which is just me asking him like one or two questions and him just getting on that soapbox and just going at it. But we want to get back into the longer form, bringing on guests like you. We're definitely gonna have you back on there as well. So,
Awesome.
but yeah, I mean it's really providing as much resources and educational things going back to the coaches. I understand that you have 25 girls and you have a job outside of coaching and you got all these things going on and you can't just worry about Erica's rehab. But that's where we come in. And that's the system that we're really trying to build out more. Because I think that it's crazy that that light bulb didn't go off earlier, but I think that we just assumed that, like, when they were getting back to that, like, if we told them what to do, it was one thing. Maybe it's a maybe it's a printout, that they handed the coach. Here, coach, this is what I'm doing outside of here. This is what I can do here, and at least
Mhm.
he has something printable that he can see, and he knows, okay, this is the first 2 weeks with Erica coming back. These are the things she's allowed to do. These are the next things. But she's allowed to do this if she was able to hit the benchmarks in her post rehab session or in her
Yeah.
rehab session that she can come. If if Erica goes 2 weeks and she hasn't improved and her numbers haven't gotten higher and she hasn't hit the standard benchmarks that we need, then guess what? Erica doesn't go into the next phase.
Yeah.
And then that needs to be communicated to the coach. Hey, listen, and then that becomes a conversation with the parent, the athlete, the coach, and the trainer. Why hasn't Erica got to that next phase? Well, she's been busy with school, she's been going out, and she has neglected her, she's only showed up for rehab once or her post rehab session once this week, and whatever it is, or she's sick, like there's a lot of different things that can add to that. But here's where you need to be before you can get to this next phase of the training. And when you can do that, then this is when you can progress. And the coach needs to be, communication is key in anything, in relationships, in getting athletes back to the field. So the better that communication can be, then there's accountability for everybody.
Well, this has been really great, and I'm sure we could go for
I
hours,
could talk for
but
10 hours to you about
yeah,
this stuff.
we'll have you back on. I think there's still a ton more to unpack with rehab, but I think it's just good to end with everyone take ACL rehab seriously. See it all the way through to the end. And when you're cleared from your PT, there needs to be that ongoing conversation of reintroducing minutes, reintroducing drills at your sports practice, having a plan for when games start with playing time. It needs to be very clear. And then I will also end for our healthy athletes. I think they can learn a lot from our ACL girls on what the standard should be for movement, for strength, for change of direction, deceleration. I think the healthy athletes really need to take some notes on this episode as well. So I will end
1000%.
with that.
Eric, I appreciate it. If I can just, like I did, I threw a little plug in there with the website. If they want to find or see more of this stuff that I'm doing, you can go to the Instagram page.
Yep.
It's at coach_HOS, Coach Haas, and you can see the stuff that I'm doing. I'm very easily accessible. You can DM me on there. I think my phone number might even be on there. Parents, just reach out. Have the questions. Again, we can't help everybody, but what we can do is we can provide a resource for everyone to do those type of things. So, we'll just see where it goes from there. I do have free 15-minute consultations that a parent or an athlete can reach out to me. So, again, thank you so much for getting me on this morning. I love it. Good to see you again. We'll
Yeah,
talk soon.
nice seeing you. I'll include all
All right.
those links in the caption below, so be sure to check those out, and I'll see everyone next time.